This week in South Florida, Carlos Lopez Quintero of Miami was Rick Scott's pick for lieutenant governor. A former legislative leader and Miami-Dade property appraiser, Lopez Quintero has built an impressive record of public service. But it looks like he was chosen as lieutenant governor to help Scott win the Hispanic vote. But can he do that? What are his marching orders from the governor? We'll ask Carlos Lopez Quintero. Plus, Miami International Airport is a crucial cog in South Florida's economy. Its new director has fought for better taxi service and more customs inspectors. We'll sit down with MIA's Emilio Gonzalez. Stories people are talking about this week in South Florida. Good morning. Glad you could join us. Let's begin with a question. Who was Rick Scott's first lieutenant governor? Do you recall, or are you stumped? Probably stumped. It was Jennifer Carroll, a state representative from Jacksonville, who liked to travel around Florida first class with an entourage at taxpayer expense, cutting ribbons and saying nice things about her boss. But she got the boot when it turned out she had close ties to some gambling interests, and then there were other ethics issues. The state managed to get along for several months without a lieutenant governor until Rick Scott chose Carlos Lopez Quintero of Miami. He was a popular choice. He is well liked by lawmakers of both parties, and he was doing a good job as the Miami-Dade property appraiser. He can certainly help Scott with the legislature, but it looks like he was picked mainly to help Scott with Hispanic voters. Carlos Lopez Quintero is with us live in our studio this morning. We are glad to welcome him to This Week in South Florida.
Thanks, Mike. Good to see you again.
CLC, Carlos, I'm just going to use Carlos this morning. It's good to see you. All right, what about this perception that you were picked by Rick Scott for all your other accomplishments, mainly because your name is Lopez Quintero?
Well, I think I was picked because of my resume and my accomplishments, my time in the legislature, my experience in local government, my experience in business. Yeah. I happen to be Hispanic, but I don't think that's why I was picked. I think I was picked for what I could bring to the team.
All right. Did Governor Scott say to you at some point, I sure hope that you can appear with me whenever I'm in South Florida, that you can appear at, he went out to a Hispanic Senior Center the other day. I was there when he was there. You were not. And he even spoke a little bad Spanish. I say that as someone who speaks bad Spanish. But you were not there. But has he said to you, come on, I want your help with Hispanic votes?
Absolutely not. He said, come on, I want your help to create jobs. Come on, I want your help to get our legislative agenda passed through the legislature. Because it was a weighty agenda this year. Yeah.
All right. Well, one more question on this, and then I'll move on. Dario Moreno, respected political scientist at FIU, a pollster, wrote a op-ed piece a couple of weeks ago in the Herald, in which he said generally Rick Scott appears to be in some trouble with Hispanic voters, most recently because he got into a tiff with Mike Fernandez of Coral Gables, the healthcare billionaire, who is his co-chair of his finance for re-election. Mike Fernandez said, your commercials, Governor, they're not working with Hispanic voters. You've got to do other things. And Mike resigned and was unhappy. I mean, he's been discreet, but he was unhappy. Is Dario Moreno right? Is the governor in trouble with Cuban Americans or other Hispanics?
Respectfully, I disagree with Dario. He's a nice guy, and I consider him a friend. But the governor's agenda has been the same from the beginning. It's about creating opportunity and jobs, and whether it's Hispanic or African American or any ethnic race, everybody wants the same thing. They want the ability to succeed and live the American dream, and that's the cornerstone of the governor's agenda and his priorities.
All right. Well, given your experience, you were the House Majority Whip. You have been in the Republican leadership. A lot of the people who are in the legislature now are still people whom you know. You know more about the legislative process than Rick Scott ever will. Are you working closely with him up there in this session?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. We were able to get the governor's #1 priority through the legislature in week 3 of session, which is something that we're proud of.
Which is?
The $400 million tax cut reversing the tag and title fees approved by Charlie Crist.
All right. Well, let's get to that because the tag and title fees for cars and trucks was passed when you were in the House, and you voted for it, as indeed almost every Republican and Democrat did. So Governor Scott signs the bill rolling back those fees, and blames Charlie Crist. He could have turned around and blamed you too.
Well, leadership does make a difference, Michael. And having served with several governors when I was in the legislature, I can say with confidence and with certainty that if Rick Scott had been governor back then, we wouldn't have had to do it because, you know, if you're not given a lot of choice by the governor's mansion and you're basically left with only one option, that's a problem. And this governor has been a governor about doing the right thing for Florida with the backdrop of how does it create jobs, how does it help our economy, and how does dollars spent create a return on investment for the citizens of Florida.
Yeah. Governor Scott made jobs his top priority. I'm the jobs governor, let's get to work. He says that over 500,000 jobs have been created in the private sector since he became governor. And while he doesn't explicitly say, I'm going to claim credit for that, implicitly, that is his message. How much credit does he really deserve?
I think he deserves a lot of credit. Look, when he took office, unemployment was at 11.1%, and the state had lost 830,000 jobs. Charlie Crist abandoned the state to go pursue his own political ambition. Governor Scott came in and started from day one to turn it around, and that's why we went from being second in the nation for unemployment increases to being second in the nation for unemployment decreases. Unemployment now is at 6.2%, and it's
below
only
the
getting
national
better.
average. Yeah, it's good. Carlos, what are your job duties as lieutenant governor, whatever the governor wants you to do?
Well, the governor's given me a lot of responsibility as it relates to the legislature and his agenda, whether it be the tax cuts or the tuition package or the individual budget priorities coming up, and the conference is going to start the Monday after Easter. So those are my primary responsibilities, and then traveling the state, listening to people. I spent a lot of time, for instance, in St. Lucie, learning about the St. Lucie River and the Okeechobee discharges
big
into the St. Lucie estuary. So learning about issues around the state. I mean, I've represented portions of Miami-Dade County, and then as property appraiser, Miami-Dade County, so I'm familiar with Dade County issues, but now I represent, as well as the governor, the entire state.
All right, well, let me ask you about an issue which probably is not going to come up in this session because the leadership isn't going to do it, nor the governor, and that is Medicaid expansion. There are nearly 1 million Floridians who do not have health insurance, who are not covered by Medicaid, who could be if the governor and the legislature accepted these billions of dollars from Washington. Why hasn't the governor and the legislature said, okay, we'll take that money?
Well, there are separate branches of government. The governor's position hasn't changed. He's in favor of it, but you need a legislature to approve it. I'll tell you something that just happened on Friday that is that would hit hospitals like Jackson, was going to hit hospitals like Jackson
Jackson's going to be hit hard.
Was the low-income pool and the local service provider dollars that were a match from the federal government. Those were going to go away. And the governor and his team have spent the last several months fighting in D.C. to get that extended, and we got word on Friday that it would be, and that means $2 billion for health care in Florida.
Well,
and then
that's
also,
great news.
The economy is important. I mean, the budget had a $3 billion shortfall when the governor came in, and now it has $1.2 billion surplus. When you build the economy back up, people are back to work, people are spending, the economy is thriving, then it creates the ability to have funds and resources to dedicate to priorities such as education. This budget, along with the last two budgets that the governor proposed, had increases to education.
Well, about $500 million more for education, but the per pupil funding is still not at the same level when you were in the House.
Well,
it's a little less.
Well, but it's still the highest level of K through 12 education, the highest dollar amount in the history of the state of Florida.
One more thing that the governor is working on, and I'd like you to report to us, is that he is supposedly speaking to the Indian tribes about a new compact, a new agreement about gambling, and a lot of people are watching this closely. Where does that stand?
Well, the governor is, there are conversations taking place, and I am confident that this governor, who is pretty good at negotiating deals, is going to negotiate and produce a deal that is the best deal for the citizens of the state of Florida.
All right. Well, the Indian tribes now pay, what, $1 billion over 5 years?
The 5-year guaranteed $1 billion, yes.
Right. Boy, that's a lot of money. The state doesn't want to lose that money.
No, and you have to negotiate with the Indians.
But Ginting and Las Vegas Sands and a lot of other people are on the sidelines, and they're giving a lot of money to lawmakers and others trying to get a destination casino. Do you favor a destination casino in Miami-Dade or Broward?
You know, that's a loaded question, Michael, because it comes with so many other details that are not included in that question about yes or no on a destination casino. You have pari-mutuels, you have the impact to the local economy, you have infrastructure needs. I mean, there are a lot of details in that question that it's not easy to yes
it's
and no.
a complex question. And one other question about what's going on in this session. This past week, Eduardo Padron, president of Miami-Dade College, really angered at least 4 state representatives from Miami-Dade, all Republicans, when he said they were bullies and that they had prevented a bill moving forward which would allow a vote on a half-cent sales tax increase for to go to voters in Miami-Dade. Where does that stand?
Well, you know, it's an unfortunate situation. I graduated from Miami-Dade College. I know it's a special institution. Hopefully during this week off, this upcoming week off, the opposing sides will come to the table, talk to each other, and we'll see what the legislature does in the last 2 weeks.
All right. Carlos Lopez-Quintero, CLC. Carlos, great to have you come in.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, and look forward to having you come back in the future.
Me too.
All right. Stay with us. Up next, we will speak to the man who runs Miami International Airport, Emilio Gonzalez. Wherever you live in South Florida, you have probably flown in or out of Miami International Airport. It's a huge operation with many moving parts, some of which don't always work that well. One problem area has been processing flyers through customs at MIA, but the relatively new boss there at the airport has been addressing that issue head on, appears to be making some progress. He is Emilio Gonzalez, the head guy at MIA, has been for just about 1 year. Previously, he ran the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services in Washington. Emilio, great to have you come in.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
And in the interest of full disclosure, let me show you that Mr. Gonzalez gave me a free hat this morning, and I'm reporting, but it's a cool hat.
Thank
MIA.
You, sir. It's a logo and a brand that reaches worldwide, so with our compliments.
Let's talk about taxis. For the longest time, Taking a taxi out of MIA was a really unpleasant experience. The taxis were often old and made lots of noise. The air conditioning didn't always work. The drivers, as nice as they were, didn't always speak good English. You couldn't use a credit card. Now you can. How did you change that?
Well, they have a year actually to implement it from the time that the new ordinance was passed. But it was something that literally the first week on the job, I was getting emails and complaints and text messages from passengers. And finally, I just looked at the problem and said, hey, we have to do something. We can't just sit back. Mayor Jimenez was fully supportive and actually took the lead in pushing this through. And I think we're going to have a world-class airport now with a world-class public transportation system.
You know, I would like to pay tribute to your predecessor, Jose Abreu, who did, I thought, an excellent job. Jose is an engineer, and he was overseeing the finishing construction on the new South Terminal and the North Terminal. Your interest seems to be primarily on improving customer service, the experience of going to MIA.
Well,
right?
I'd be remiss if I didn't agree with you with Jose. He's a good friend, and he did an incredible job, and I walk through his legacy every day. But the fact is, the Miami International Airport is a business, and it's a business that is a key economic engine for the county.
Right.
It generates a quarter of all the jobs in the county, and we have to be competitive. And it isn't so much a function of customer service, it's just good business practices.
Yeah. Emilio, I think in the last week or so, you went to Washington, met with people at Homeland Security. You had already made, I think, good progress on staffing up Customs and Border Patrol so that people on international flights were processed more quickly. Where does that stand?
Well, they're going to come down and tell us essentially where we stand in their new staffing model. There were 2,000 additional agents that were authorized for Customs and Border Protection. I'm told that we're probably going to get about 60 of those as a floor. I'm going to go back next month and see what else we can do, because quite frankly, this airport is the fastest growing airport in the United States. And my concern is that when those officers arrive here 18 months from now, we will be way beyond that need.
Yeah, you'll be on 60, the need for 60 new officers. I have to say that I have come back into MIA from international trips and had to wait in line a while to get through and have my passport examined and stamped.
Well, we've now instituted some electronic kiosks that you can use if you've come back recently.
Right.
The wait time is literally seconds as opposed to minutes.
Yeah.
And it's cut down the experience for U.S. and Canadian travelers about 40%. But 70% of our inbound traffic is overseas. So those are the individuals that we need to try and get through and give them the experience that they deserve.
Right. On your new and improved business card, which you gave me this morning, on the back, you can't see this at home, but it says MIA Gateway to Brazil 2014. I mean, thousands of travelers on their way to the FIFA, the soccer championships in Brazil, are going to come through here.
Absolutely. And interestingly, not only is MIA the airport with the most flights to Brazil in the United States, period, but of the 12 World Cup cities, 10 of them you could go directly from Miami.
Wow.
So we're anticipating that not just U.S. travelers, but Asian travelers and European travelers will come through our gateway.
Yeah. How's the Portuguese-speaking population at...
we've got a few. My Portuguese is pretty bad. It's about as good as your Spanish. But
we fail.
But we get by. Just to give you a quick statistic, Michael, we did an analysis. In June of last year, we had 437 flights to Brazil.
Wow.
In June of this year, right now, we're projecting 578. So it's about a 30% increase just in flights. So you can imagine what that's going to do to the airport. It's going to tax everything. It's going to tax our ground transportation, our customs, even the employees and customer service. So we're trying to get ahead as much as we can.
All right. Well, given your record over the last year, things are going well out there. We salute you. We thank you. And I'll be wearing my hat.
I hope so.
I'll put the top down on my car. I'll be wearing my MIA hat.
I hope so.
Emilio Gonzalez, thanks a million.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. All right, up next, we will open the mail. Now, briefly for the mail, the hike in tolls on the I-95 express lanes really angers Stephen Schneiderman. He wrote to say, "Where is the outrage over this tax? I'm not sure if this is what people mean when they use the phrase highway robbery, but it seems to fit." All right, still to come, my personal perspective about the price of speaking your mind. Miami-Dade College President Eduardo Padron did, and it's going to cost him. Before we leave you this morning, a personal perspective about the price of honesty. Sometimes it can be very costly, and it looks like it's going to cost Miami-Dade College dearly. The college has been underfunded for years, but still managed to do excellent work for its 175,000 students and our community. And one main reason for the excellence is President Eduardo Padron. For the last few years, he has been trying to get a proposal on the ballot asking voters here to approve a half-cent sales tax hike for MDC. I would vote for it, but it's probably not going to be on the ballot this year because Dr. Padron spoke too candidly to the Miami Herald editorial board earlier this week. He called 4 local state representatives bullies for blocking a bill that would allow the question on the ballot. Now, no one is disputing the fact that these 4 lawmakers opposed the tax hike, and that's their right. But to not let the voters have their say on it is simply wrong. Dr. Padron, who I am proud to call a friend, went too far, I think, in criticizing those lawmakers. He made it personal, always a bad idea with elected officials. That caused 11 Miami-Dade legislators to get their knickers in a twist. They demanded an apology, which they got, but now they still have an excuse for opposing the Miami-Dade bill. Here's hoping they get over their hurt feelings. Miami-Dade College is an indispensable institution. It does great work. It needs more money. Let's get this sales tax question on the ballot. That's my perspective for this week. Hope you have a great Sunday. Remember, as always, stay informed, get involved. I'm Michael Putnam.